Hey everyone, this is Walter from Tilta, and this is part 2 of the quick start guide for the Gravity G1 Gimbal. In this video, I'm going to show you how to properly balance your camera, but first let me give you some technical specs on the gimbal. The gimbal gives you 360 degrees of rotation in the pan axis, you have full tilt here, and you have 60 degrees of rotation on the roll axis. It requires 4 18650 batteries, and has a battery life of 10 hours per charge. The max payload of the gimbal is about 8 pounds, which means you could fly anything from a GH5, a Sony a7S, or even a 1DX. It also has 3 distinct operating modes, which I will go into more detail in part 3 of this video. Now, I'm going to show you a basic configuration with a mirrorless camera that we have here. We're going to balance it with the gimbal off. First thing you want to do is get your base plate with riser and screw it into the bottom of your camera like this. Now with the tightening knob in the front, I'm going to adjust the height of our lens support for our lens. Now holding down the release pin here, you're going to slide the plate into the receiver, just like that. And now by holding the tilt motor, I'm going to find my balance for my tilt. Now what you're looking for is a proper balance between forward and backward. If it's too far back on the plate, you're going to see it tilt up. If it's too far forward on the plate, you're going to see it tilt down. So you want to try to get it somewhere in the middle where the camera's facing directly ahead. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's lock that down there. Next thing we want to do is adjust the roll axis. So you have 2 different sections where you can adjust the roll axis. You have a locking pin here to adjust the camera on the arm here, left and right. You also have a pin here to adjust the whole arm setup here, left and right. Now, first I want to release the one furthest away from me and get the camera as close as possible to the tilt axis motor while still having enough room to be able to slide the camera backwards and forwards on this axis to do some fine adjustments to your tilt axis. So this is what it looks like when the camera is balanced too far right on the mount. Now let me show you what it looks like when the camera is balanced too far left. You'll see that it still wants to roll over to the left. So I'm going to unlock this pin here. And while holding the camera on the bottom here, you're going to slide it over this way. And you just want to find a nice area where the camera is perfectly balanced until you don't see the roll axis move. There we go. And lock it down like that. Next thing we want to do is adjust the height of the camera. But first, before we do that, we want to put the hot shoe support bracket on by screwing the pin in here. You have 2 different 1/4-20 access points, and you slide the hot shoe into the receiver right here. Slowly tighten it down, but you don't want to lock it down all the way because you might have to do some fine adjustments. And now we're going to adjust our height. We're going to flip the camera on its back. Now let me show you what it looks like when it's not balanced. Too high and the camera will want to flip upside down. Too low and the camera will go into just a neutral forward position. Now what you're looking for is the same as the roll axis and the tilt axis. Just trying to find a balance where the camera doesn't move forward or backward, just like that. So now that we have our axes almost balanced, and because we put this top support bracket on, we're gonna have to just do a little fine tune to every axis here. So let me start with my roll. So here, we're tilting a little too much to the right, so let me just support it with my hand here and move it back to the left. And I'm going to adjust it just so it balances perfectly. And we're talking about millimeters here. Very fine tuning. Okay, so that's good there. Let's look at our tilt. So we're tilting back a little bit. Let me just release here. We're going to move it slightly forward. Okay. Too much. Okay. Now the most important motor that you want to make sure is balanced is the pan axis. Now let me show you an example of what it looks like when it's not balanced. I tilt over to the side and the camera moves. Now this means it's a little front heavy because its motion is going this way. Let me show you what it looks like when it's too back heavy. So instead of the front of the camera moving this way, it's the back. Okay, so what you want to look for is just a nice balance between front and back. And if you turn the gimbal over on the side, it shouldn't move. Okay, So finally, what I want to do is just one last double check on all the axes. Just keep in mind that what I did was for the tilt axis, I'm holding onto the motor here and just sliding back and forth until you find a nice neutral position where the camera doesn't move. For roll, once we've put our camera as close as possible to this motor, you want to just double check to make sure the camera isn't rolling on either side. And then for the height, you're just bringing it on its back and adjusting it forward and backward to make sure it doesn't move from its position there in height. And then for the pan axis, you're just turning it on to the side here and making sure the pan doesn't move. Okay, so now that we have all three axes set up, and I'm gonna lock down everything. We're gonna hold down the on-off button. You're gonna see the LEDs blink, and you're gonna wait for the motors to take hold. All right, there we go. So once you turn on the gimbal, it'll be in mode 2. Let me show you mode 3, which we call chicken head mode. And then mode 1, which is our majestic mode. And that's it. This has been part 2 of the quick start guide for the Gravity G1 Gimbal. Stay tuned for part 3, where I will show you the 3 operating modes and go into more detail about them, as well as how to configure them through the Tilta Assist app. This is Walter, and thanks for watching.